one of the most fundamental experiences that we need to bring in regularly is silence, because we live in a very noisy, pain-filled, dense reality. And the higher frequencies are much quieter. So the silence allows us to quiet all of the noise so that we can give permission for the higher frequencies, the ordering energies of consciousness, the intelligence of consciousness to come in and start to do its work in these dense beings.
Welcome to Personal Development Mastery Podcast, empowering you with the simple, consistent actions needed to master yourself and create a life of purpose and fulfillment. I'm your host, Epigenetics, and my mission is simple: to inspire you to take action towards improving your life. In this podcast, I invite myself inside the minds of remarkable people and I distill their wisdom for you. So, if you're ready to find practical insights that you can implement right now, make sure you follow the podcast and get the episodes as soon as they are released. Speaking of insights, how would you like a free copy of my book, 88 Actionable Insights for Life? It's a book based on the conversations with the notable people I had doing this podcast, and you as my listener can get it now, before its official launch. As a matter of fact, I'm giving it to you as a present. Go to agikeramidas.com/88 to download your copy. And coming to today's episode, when you listen to this conversation with my guest Antonia today, you will find out where trauma and pain actually come from, how we can work with them, and why to do it, what benefits that facilitates working with that. You will also hear about the transition from the current quote-unquote third dimension and the shift we are undergoing as humanity, as well as what these dimensions actually represent. This is an illuminating conversation. Keep your mind open and let's dive right in. Today I am excited to welcome Antonia, a registered holistic psychotherapist and the author of Dismantling the Third Dimension book. Antonia, you have a background in international development and community health, and in 2006 you experienced a dramatic, as you call it, accelerated awakening. You combine Western psychotherapy with energetic transmutation to help your clients dissolve ancient trauma patterns and expand self-awareness. You are passionate about preparing healers and seekers for a wave of healing as our collective ancient traumas surface rapidly on the path to the next reality. Antonia, welcome to the show. It's such a pleasure to have you here today.
It's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm very much looking forward to this conversation. And as I was telling you before we started recording, it is a topic that, or a pathway of topics, shall we say, that I haven't explored much in the podcast so far. However, I'm very much drawn to do so. So I was very intrigued by your story and what you do. So today we will explore collective healing, the transition from the third dimension. Before we go there, I would like to ask you for some background. Tell me about that transition in 2006. How was your life before and what triggered that transition?
Yeah, good question. So before that, I spent many years just getting degree after degree after degree, right? Trying to pursue some worthiness and show up in the world, a political world, a social justice world, by gaining some credibility through academia. International development. I got a master's in that and worked in the Southern Hemisphere, worked in community health here in North America. So really my community and my validation was around academia and the very political environment and very mainstream healthcare. And then in 2006, I can't say anything triggered it. It was and I think there was a moment I remember sitting in my office, literally sitting up straight with the feeling of, I don't think I'm supposed to be doing this. Like, this doesn't feel like where I'm meant to be. And even having that thought feeling, it was very strong, but also was met with very strong doubt. Like, what are you thinking? Right? You have a good job, you got benefits, you're pursuing this career. So there was even a tension within when this really strong feeling happened. So it was quite a few months and maybe a year and a half that everything just started to get a little bit nutty. And things that I had never understood, things that I didn't have a reference point for, started to happen. What everybody's talking about, like synchronicities. And I suddenly connected to things like my intuition, and had, my one very strange instructional dream. And then in I think about a year and a half in this very strange process that was unfolding day after day, very strange things and compulsions and being pulled, I started to then feel energy moving through my body. And as energy increasingly moved through my body, almost in the beginning, maybe it was about a weekly basis, energy would start pushing through discomfort, pain, suffering would start to come to the surface, move through, and afterward there'd be this sense of clarity and understanding and ease and joy that would come in place of anxiety that I didn't know I was even feeling, or shame that I wasn't aware I was holding. So this huge process started to unfold and continues today.
Wow, right. So my understanding then is that there was no any particular practice or something that you did to, it just happened on its own, basically. I'm curious, were you or did you consider yourself a spiritual person before that time?
Not at all. And in fact, I think a year before I was wrestling in my mind, because these are things that I was always a curious person, but I approached it from an academic, an observer position, probably from judgment as well. And I grew up in a family where we never said the word God, for example. And I don't currently use that word in my, communications, but it wasn't a place where we discussed the spiritual. We discussed academia and politics. We discussed advancing in a very material, mind-driven world. How do you become the smartest, the most effective, contribute in the most meaningful ways, do well? So I had nobody around me and no language in order to validate what I was experiencing. So it was extremely isolating. I was met with, there was this magical reality was met with really terror, because I did not understand. And this part of me that had this whole other reference point for meaningful and good and worthy and affirmed, all of that was really felt quite ashamed and shunned this other part of me that was emerging very quickly and very painfully. Like, this was not an easy process coming through.
I can only imagine, Antonia.
Mm-hmm.
And what you were saying about, the left brain side, that of people who are, have a more scientific approach or analytical approach, because, well, our society to a large extent is like that. We want proof, and things that are completely unproven yet, I would add to that, are many times confronted with skepticism, to say the least. Usually it's much more than that. It is straight rejection rather than skepticism, but let's assume that skepticism is the way many people see these things. Let me bring that to what you do then, because you say that you combine Western psychotherapy with metaphysical practice, like a holistic approach. So can you tell me, how do you do that, and what are the benefits of that?
Yeah. So, I still work with some clients in a very Western, they're actually more complementary because I work with the Ayurveda and the yoga and the meditation. So that's a bit more of the mainstream alternative. Other clients who are going through their, or feeling like, or not even aware, but I can feel energetically that they're moving into this expansive project in their own lives. Okay. I seem to be the tipping point. So, as pain released, there were many things that began to reveal themselves, knowings and understandings. And one of the many things was the nature of pain that started to expose itself. And pain is a contracted, dense, limited event stored in the being. So the antidote, or the function of pain then, is to use it as a creative project to bring in, greater expansion, greater knowing. There's a potential buried within density that once it's revealed, out with it comes an expanded reality. So when I work with clients, I work with the density as a story that is stuck somewhere in their physical, emotional, energetic being. And what I do is bring awareness to the story of the pain versus I am pain, my life's painful, everything is painful. It's what storyline that you have from your childhood, that you had from your ancestors, because we're learning more and more through epigenetics and intergenerational trauma that we pass down pain stories through the generations. If we bring awareness, meaning I can see and observe and even love and accept this density. Now, acceptance and love are lighter energies that we can bring into the denser, contracted energies of pain. We have transformation. We have expansion, we have growth. And so working energetically, I transmit that witnessing, that awareness, that consciousness, the higher frequencies of consciousness into the denser, lower frequencies of fear, shame, rage that they're holding in their beings. And when they do so, literally the body goes, oh, I don't need this anymore. This is not part of my reality. I don't believe in this pain story. And off it goes, literally transforming, releasing, which is all really other words for it, meaning it doesn't even exist anymore, if it ever did.
When you say pain, you mentioned pain quite a few times already. Do you mean physical pain or psychological pain, or both?
Yeah, all of the above. They're all related. So if you look at the ancient Vedic texts, and Ayurveda is what I've studied, the root of all pain that we understand in this reality is repressed emotion. So we have an emotional experience that we're not able to make sense of and organize and arrive at safety. So when we don't arrive at safety, then that experience gets stuck in the body. And out of that experience, then we construct thought processes, painful thought processes. We construct core beliefs, which are wrapped around, built upon pain. We construct behaviors that then emerge out of this pain. So, and then the denser that emotional pain gets, the more we believe it and the more we build behaviors, its density increases, the more fear we might experience, and then it starts to manifest in physical body. So pain is pain is pain is pain. And my focus is usually drilling down to the repressed emotion. That's the root when I work with people, is to work energetically and emotionally, and they're very tightly linked, to get down into the root of the contracted emotion that got stuck in there. The fear, shame, and rage, not the story, not what it's about, not the history of it, but the actual concentrated state of fear or shame or rage or guilt or grief or disgust that got stuck in the being.
And you mentioned, and tell me if I understood that correctly, that this pain does not necessarily come from our life or maybe our childhood, but you said that it can be passed down through generations. Is that what you mean when you talk about the ancestral trauma?
Yeah, I believe so. Once again, these are just only beginning to be measurable phenomena.
Mm-hmm.
But in the years that I have been releasing suffering from my body, I don't necessarily access the vision of it, but I do usually access the essence of, the root of that emotional event. And for the last 17 years I've been doing this, 99% of it are events that never happened in this life. It's just not possible. Villages being pillaged, being burnt alive. I felt my throat being cut. So, other horrific events I don't need to go into that have been, literally being dug deep and pulled out of this being.
Mm-hmm.
So this is from, my own personal experience. And as I said, I think research is coming on epigenetics and intergenerational trauma, that they're beginning to validate that experience that I think many of us are having, and that I believe we're going to increasingly have the surfacing of these ancient wounds, ancient stories.
If you're enjoying this episode, can you find one person that you think would add value to and share it with them? I would really appreciate you, and it really helps grow the show and also helps you add value to people you care about. Thank you so much. Let's get back to the episode. We'll come back to that for sure. Just want to, the reason I was asking that was, I think many, if not most people, are kind of familiar with the idea that suppressed emotions from childhood can lead to behavioral changes and pain, emotional pain that eventually can manifest as physical pain and so on. So I think that is, it is quite well documented, I think, and many people are familiar with it. However, the idea that the pain is not coming from our childhood, but it has been passed on from previous generations, it's something that from my experience anyway, the most people are, I will use that word again that I used earlier, skeptical, if not, they are not familiar with the concept. So it was very interesting to hear what you were saying, that these phenomena, as you said, they are being researched now, and there is science backing that. So it's not just some purely theoretical concept. There are so I would like a comment about this, especially the scientific part of what you just told me about the ancestral trauma, or I think you understand the question.
So you're looking for me to comment more on what's coming out of the research, or that what is the nature of this phenomenon? Like, how exactly are we handing down trauma through the generations?
The research, if you just give me an example of something that has been researched and shown about what you're saying, that would be very helpful. Yes.
Yeah, I think that there's a new book, not new, it's been out for a few years, called Epigenetics. And it's showing the author focuses on not just on the genetic mutation, but actually how our traumas affect genetic behaviors, and that we can hand that down through generations. And they did some research from the famine in Holland during World War II, and how the grandchildren of those that had experienced the famine in Holland in World War II, that the impact of that food deprivation and malnutrition and the trauma of that is impacting now how people are, their metabolism, anxiety, depression, etc. So it makes sense to me, and on top of that, my own personal experience, that if it can be handed down through 2 generations, it can be handed down through many generations. And we have thousands of years of tormenting each other. We have been traumatizing each other for a long, long time in very creative ways, in horrific ways that there is no possible way we could make sense of or process, in our lifetimes, most of it, when we're in danger from everything and everybody. And I think humans have been the biggest threat, not just that threat of our lives, but the feeling of terror, fear of, that we can hold is because of the threat of other people in our beings. So I think that gets etched into our beings and we hand it down through the generations. But Richard Rudd says that gets etched into the DNA, that affects our very coding. And so I believe that the work that I think we can see that this expansive process that is increasing around the planet, energy, the higher frequencies are coming in, more of us are working with those higher frequencies, and therefore we, I think, are better able to, or more able to bring enough energy in to start to impact trauma held in the coding, at the coding level. Right? Because I think we understand it's all energy, it's all light. So we are beginning to permeate the density, to penetrate the density of our, what I think is a pain reality that these physical bodies hold, which is the 3D, to penetrate the density of that pain reality and begin to transform these ancient traumas into higher frequencies of acceptance, gratitude, love, compassion, etc.
Thank you. And let me shift to what you just said, because you mentioned the 3D, the third dimension, and your book discusses transitioning from the third dimension to a collective journey. Can you clarify for us what these dimensions represent and how this shift impacts us and our growth and our healing also?
Yeah, I love the question. So I love that you said the word represent. I think that's really necessary to understand. And that's how I use the word, the third dimension. And I don't even use the word fifth dimensions, like a lot of people who are working in the metaphysical world right now are comfortable using fifth dimension. I don't know. I have no idea what's going on past this one. I just know what direction I'm going. So what the way I use the concept of third dimension is that it represents a reality of pain and how pain manifests socially in our social organization is in states of divisiveness. Us versus them is what I consistently refer to in the book. Us versus them. And we find safety in the us. I'm going to find my little group, my tribe over here. I'm going to identify with this tribe. And in this identity, I'm going to find safety against all of the thems out there who are constantly trying to get what I have or beat me down or, get me out of their way. So that pain is defining that us versus them. That's the social organization. Fear, shame, and rage, guilt and grief and jealousy has been constructing our social reality. It can't not, because we have thousands and thousands and thousands of years of pain handed down through generations. It's a very dense reality here. So it has been what is defining my social relation, my motivation for career advancement, my relationship status, or my relationship desires. As we release more pain, defining my reality as one of fear and therefore constructing my social reality from the needs of fear, I release fear. What comes in fear's place when we release fear are the higher frequencies of compassion and connection. And out of that comes empathy. So we go from an us versus them reality, and we feel what are the state of higher frequencies. The social organization becomes connection. We are connectivity. And we move out of a pain state of divisiveness into a reality of connection and connectivity, where we are more able to see and have awareness of the other, because pain lacks awareness. Pain sees itself. When we release pain, we see the other. We see environment. So empathy comes in, and we move into greater states of unity, that you and we are the same. You are me and I am you. And I think that naturally moves in, and we automatically, just by releasing pain through greater awareness and the healing energies of consciousness, move into that unity state, and our social organization falls out of that.
I kept two words from what you said. One was the divisiveness, and the other was unity, the complete opposite. So I think, for me anyway, that answer is really gives me an understanding of what I what I asked. So thank you for the answer. There is
Yeah.
one other thing you uh, mentioned in a way earlier on, that it's going to be more, and we were talking, I think, about the ancestral traumas that are resurfacing, and if I'm not mistaken, you alluded that this is going to increase, and I think in my introduction I also mentioned that. So can you explain why this happens, and what is, in your opinion, on the other side of it?
Wow. The whys, it's beyond me.
Okay.
So I think lots of people have beautiful theories as to the
Right.
whys and, the cycles of this planet, the energetic cycles. And now we're moving out of the Kali Yuga, right? The state of pain that we've been in for 28,000 years. And we're moving now naturally into higher frequencies on the planet. And so we as humans are here to, experience that and take advantage of that to build our creative
Hmm.
potential, creative energies, the creative process that is involved in those higher frequencies.
Right.
But I don't know. I don't know anything, to tell you the truth. So I'm just really glad to be on for the ride here. It's a very uncomfortable ride. so I don't know why. I'm really excited to find out when I, access that piece of information, the why. Yeah.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
uh, there is, okay. I will, let me go back and ask something simpler, then, or maybe not simpler, but something that you are very, very well familiar with, and that's your book. Can you tell me your motivation or the why behind it, and who is it for? I mean, who would really benefit by picking a copy and
Yeah.
reading it?
The I love my work. And it really emerged like as a co-creation between myself and the work with my clients. And I'm a therapist, so I work with trauma. As the pain continued to release, my understanding of pain, expanded. And so my client, and this process is shared with my clients. Like, we're walking this together, we're expanding together. So this really came out of and for witnessing the release slash transformation slash dissolution of trauma
Mhm.
as part of our expansion
Mhm.
process. And so, all the work that I've done has sort of been motivated by seeing it through the lens of how do we manage, work with trauma, suffering coming through as part of this process. We have to work with it. So the book is really about, wow, there's this beautiful thing happening. I had no idea, scared the bejeepers out of me. Here we are. And now that I see that a lot of the process that many of us, not all of us, are going through is really about moving pain through our mind body. How do we work with this so that we get out of our own way, so that we allow this to because one of the number one habits that we have, particularly in the West, is avoidance, is denial, right? Is distraction. We have an entire economy built upon distraction and avoidance. So how do we bring this into awareness and work with the pain in such a way that we allow it to move through our beings and not hold on to the stories, not keep them in place? And so this is a lot of what I work with, is how do we then blend this trauma framework with this metaphysical process phenomenon that is occurring right now. And so that's what I provide in the book, or things like working with safety. I think is fundamental. The body needs to be safe if you're going to go through this process. We work with self-compassion, we work with ownership, we work, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So this is and this is for my clients and others who are going through this. And myself, of course. It's all about me, right? I mean, this is all my expansion dream, right?
Thank you, and I can certainly resonate, and I think the listener probably can as well, with what you were saying about the denial and the distraction. It is, we live in a society that, you said, there is a huge industry built around that. Everything is, or not everything, that's a strong word, but so many things are designed to distract us and take our attention, and pain and working with pain, it is not easy for many, because it's pain by definition of the word. It is something very uncomfortable. So let me ask you this, because I always want to share with the listener something actionable, like a practical insight, because it's one thing to understand some things theoretically, but it's another thing to actually do something about all that. So what would you
Yeah.
say to someone listening now that finds this interesting? When I say this, I mean what you said about working with pain or moving through the pain, but finding that first, either denial or distraction is the natural way of dealing. I'm using dealing in quotation marks because it's not really dealing with it, it's just avoiding it. But how would one approach that, or what's one step they could take towards actually working with that, doing something about it?
Yeah. So there's a lot of things, and there are a lot of people and new spaces available for us to begin or to step into
Mm-hmm.
this. And there's a lot, and so a lot of it is in the book, to really outline all the potential out there and how to move into the process. But the fundamental I think one of the most fundamental experiences that we need to bring in regularly is silence,
Mm-hmm.
because we live in a very noisy, pain-filled, dense reality, and the higher frequencies are, I mean, they're much quieter. They're up here. So the silence allows us to quiet all of the noise so that we can give permission for the higher frequencies, the ordering energies of consciousness, the intelligence of consciousness, to come in and start to do its work in these dense beings.
Mm-hmm.
So I myself lead meditation retreats. I the deep dive of silence just cracks things open, makes it safe enough for you to go, oh, look at the stories I'm carrying around. Look at the pain that I keep recycling. Look at the thought processes that are self-sabotaging. Look at the way I'm harming myself. Look at the BS I keep perpetuating. Look at the things that I just have never wanted to look at, didn't even know existed. When we get really quiet, those things start to expose themselves. That's the foundation. Now,
Mm-hmm.
there's lots of other things and practices that we can bring in regularly, and we need to bring in order to keep this process going. We need to be vigilant. We need to be able to feel our feelings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But, finding the quiet is the opposite of denial. It's the opposite of avoidance. To sit in pure presence, not avoidant meditation, which we can do too. We can sit in quiet to avoid everything, but to sit in presence. I'm going to be here quietly with whatever shows up, and practice acceptance in that quiet. Whew, it's beautiful. And we've known that for thousands of years. And right now, even more so.
Thank you for this answer. I will share that a couple of weeks ago I came back from a Vipassana silent retreat. So, what you're saying about being silent, not to avoid things, but to face them, but be equanimous about them, regardless of whether we perceive them as good or bad. So that's a beautiful answer, and thank you for reinforcing or reaffirming that also to me as well. Antonia, I have two last quick questions to ask you before we wrap this truly fascinating conversation up. Before I ask them, can you tell us what is the best place for the listener to find out more about you and connect?
So my website, which has lots of stuff on there about me and what I'm doing is www.tribe2collective.com. tribe2collective.com. So you can contact me and find out about the work I do, and the more and more I'm moving into group work, which I love group work, right? The collective, we create unity, and together we feed each other's process, I think, is where more and more of us know works, which is why we go on Vipassana retreats and yoga retreats, right? So yeah, that's the website. You can find out. And if you have any questions, you can contact me through there.
Thank you. And let me ask you then two last quick fire questions. I always ask them to my guests. And the first one is, what does personal development mean to you?
You know, it's interesting, the words personal development, because personal development dissolves the personal. Because in an expansive project, we are connecting. Mm-hmm. And the I moves away and the we moves in. So personal development becomes collective development, which is collective evolution, which is expansion. Mm. Yeah.
Thank you. I have come to that realization as well. When I first was, the term personal development implied that it is personal for me, but it took me a while to understand that through me it is the collective or the contribution. So anyway, I will leave that for now. And let me ask you one more hypothetical question this time. Let's say you could go back in time and meet your 18-year-old self. What's one piece of advice you would give her?
Love yourself. Figure out how to do it. Start now. Love yourself. Start now. And it's not easy, so start now. Figure it out as early as possible. So fundamental, right? Love self is love all, right? Love everything. So love yourself. Yeah.
Thank you. Antonia, I want to thank you very much. This has been, as I said earlier, a truly fascinating discussion. I think there were many things that were brought up that not just for me, asking the questions and following my natural curiosity and what intrigues me, but I think we offered some option or some possibility to, maybe open up for someone who was, again, I will use that word skeptical that I used already a couple of times in the past. So I believe and I hope for sure that we offered that. So I want to thank you very much for the conversation. I want to wish you all the very best with your mission, with what you're doing, with your contribution to this awakening of human consciousness. Any last parting words from you?
Oh, I'm very grateful for you offering this container, right? This is what it's about. These are the mediums for transmitting, right? Higher frequencies, so compassion and empathy and acceptance. So I'm really grateful for this opportunity, really.
And before I leave you for today, if you've enjoyed this episode, can you find one person that you think it would add value to and share it with them? I would really appreciate you. Not only does it help grow the show, it also helps you add value to people that you care about. Thank you so much. Until next time, stand out, don't fit in,